there were two sides to it. Russia had all along said that it's because Ukraine wanted to enter NATO, it's because there were deep advances being made very close to its territory that it had to defend itself. Ukraine, on the other hand, said, well, it's an independent country and has the right to decide for itself whether it should be in NATO or not. And in the midst of all this, Europe changed forever. You had countries like Finland, Denmark, Sweden, which were known for being absolutely independent in their opinion, finally take stances. But what has happened in this last 3 years is there's been a change of guard in the US, and with that, a change of position. But before we get any of that, I want to play out this report that tells the viewers what really happened, and then we get you voices on ground from Russia and Ukraine, and then we move ahead. But first up, that report.
A dictator without elections. He's not going to have a country left. Got to move.
3 years into the war, Ukraine's fight has taken a dark turn. Zelensky, once a symbol of resistance, celebrated by the West, is now under attack. President Donald Trump's return to the White House has upended everything. The US, once Kyiv's staunch ally, has turned its back, signaling a potential shift towards Russia, once a global pariah. Trump's America First mantra, now focused on ending the war, has ignited chaos.
He refuses to have elections. It's low in the real Ukrainian polls. I mean, how can you be high with every city is being demolished? It's hard to be high. Somebody said, oh, no, his polls are good. Give me a break. Every city is being demolished. They look like a demolition site, every single one of them. And the only thing he was really good at was playing Joe Biden like a fiddle. He played him like a fiddle. That's an expression we use, Yasser, to say that he's pretty easy. A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. Got to move fast.
Президент Трамп з великою повагою до нього відносимося як до лідера народу, який ми дуже поважаємо, американський народ, який нас постійно підтримує. На жаль, живе в цьому дезінформаційному просторі.
Europe's once solid backing of Ukraine is now a distant memory. Leaders like German Chancellor Scholz and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer are sidelined, leaving NATO fractured and vulnerable. Zelensky's position crumbling. Internal corruption scandals, fading NATO hopes, and the US retreating have left Zelensky in a desperate fight. The war's toll devastating. Cities reduced to rubble, civilians caught in the chaos, and international fighters on both sides further complicating the battlefield. As Russia pushes forward, the question isn't if Ukraine can hold, it's how long can it last. With Russian advances and relentless missile strikes, the future is uncertain and the death toll continues to rise. The world watches, but will it be too late to stop the bleeding?
Okay, on the eve of the third anniversary of the war, there have been fresh shelling that's taken place. And let's get in both Dasha Chernyshova, who's joining me from Moscow, as well as Stuart Smith, who's joining me from Kiev to understand what's really happening on ground. Dasha, let me start with you. There's been very important commentary that's come in from Moscow saying they don't want quick fixes, they want a long-term solution. Tell us what's the mood like on ground in Moscow on the third anniversary of what was essentially a military operation.
Yes, indeed, among the Russian establishment, the politicians, there is a very clear understanding that time for the negotiations is here and those talks are now beginning, but also the outcome of those talks is quite uncertain. What Moscow is pushing for is to address the so-called root causes of this conflict in Ukraine. And with regard to that, the Russian officials have explained many times that this is the stance of Ukraine when it comes to any sort of military blocks. So Russia is concerned about any possibility of Ukraine being further dragged into the NATO orbit, and Moscow wants this issue to be addressed and some sort of legal guarantees that would prevent that from happening. Another thing that we can certainly understand from the Russian side is that in the negotiations they had with the American side last week in Saudi Arabia, they have not heard any plan from the Trump administration with regards to the Ukraine settlement. So this is still the work to be done. The Russian Foreign Minister, Deputy Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov has said on Monday that any ceasefire to the conflict in Ukraine would not be a guarantee of this conflict not erupting once again. So they do want to make sure that there is the lasting solution worked out, that this is ironclad, that this is legally binding, and that will be preventing this conflict from erupting once again, because the fear in Moscow is that certainly these conflicts that is so close to the Russian borders will not be fixed in the manner that will provide for any sort of lasting solution. So this is the sentiment among the Russian elites. Speaking about the Russian population, you can definitely see another tendency. There is the overwhelming desire for the end of this conflict. No matter who you ask, whether those who support the conflict, whether those who disapprove of the start of this operation, the vast majority of Russians would be seeking an end to the conflict and the start of the negotiations.
Indeed. Let me now come to you, Stuart. The world has, or at least the main world leaders, those from Europe, have come to Kiev. They are, of course, standing with Ukraine in solidarity. But much of Europe doesn't really have a solution right now for this conflict, does it?
That's right, and it's what's meant the last 3 years is something that President Zelensky said while he supports the efforts of Europe and the United States under the Joe Biden administration. There was never a clear strategy about how to end this. Now there is a strategy being proposed in a sense from Donald Trump, which is to at least talk with Russia and try to come to some sort of agreement. But in the wake of that, Ukraine is terrified that that could mean it ends up having to concede a huge amount to Russia and also therefore would also end up making the rest of Europe more vulnerable to any future incursion. So what does Ukraine want? It wants security guarantees, and it means not just legally binding agreements or reassurances from Moscow or Washington, but something physical in Ukraine that would prevent military action taking place again. Now, President Zelensky still says the most cost-efficient way to that end is NATO membership for Ukraine. But with Russia being quite clear on that not happening, and Zelensky realizing that neither the Americans nor the Europeans ever really wanted that to happen either, he's asking for peacekeeping forces in Ukraine from both the United States and Europe. And that's hard right now because the United States says it doesn't want to provide any peacekeepers on the territory of Ukraine. So UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron in Washington this week to try to convince Donald Trump that as long as Europe puts up some troops, then the Americans should as well, as part of any ceasefire agreement. But still really early stages, everyone recognises into these talks, and it's still not clear whether Moscow is seriously considering peace or not, considering, as you said, that it has managed to make advances over the past 3 years. Last year alone, 4 times the size of Kiev in terms of territory was taken, and Ukraine is struggling to push back Russian forces still, though that advance is creeping.
Indeed. And Dasha, which brings me to ask you this, that while on one end Europe may not have a solution, voices within the American establishment are also saying that what they want from President Trump is a very clear guarantee as well, that, you know, when an agreement is signed, he will not go back on it. Something that happened in 2014 after Crimea.
Well, in Russia, there is the understanding that there will have to be some sort of arrangement that will be using the balance of interest. And that's, again, according to the Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov. But with that said, we have so far heard only what Russia is demanding, what Russia is not ready, that Russia is not ready to concede any territory to the Ukrainian side, that it wants security guarantees, that it wants demilitarized Ukraine, neutral Ukraine, but no word with regard to what Russia Russia could be given in exchange if we are talking about any possible negotiations, because that is, according to political analysts, the essence of talks. But at the same time, the very clear picture that we are getting from Moscow is that this is a very early stage of those talks, and all of the components are yet to be put together. When we speak about this conflict in Ukraine, Russia has been saying that the security architecture in Europe has crippled. So this solution for Ukraine should also be part of a wider deal for the European security. Obviously, if you ask the Russian businesses, they would like to see some sanctions relief as well. But if you talk to the Russian authorities, they would all say that Russia can deal and can live even under those sanctions, once again stressing that the Russian economy has been showing not only the signs of resilience, but also the growth of over 4% over the course of the past years. So not only in Russia, there is a sense that Russia can go on with this conflict, and it is the desire on the Western side to bring this conflict to an end that is needed.
Okay, so appreciate Dasha and Stuart for joining me. The fact is, yes, Russian war machinery has survived 3 years of a tsunami of sanctions. I don't share Dasha's view as to whether it can go on indefinitely, but yes, it's done better than what maybe some of the Western analysts may have expected 3 years back. To talk more on that and what lies ahead in terms of the new US-Europe relationship, the new US-Russia relationship, is going to be Sir Martin Sorrell. He's joining me live to talk more about this. And before I deep dive into it, sir, you're a man of advertising, you're a man of PR, you understand the importance of taking those timely breaks. Stay with me, I'm going to be back in just a minute with this commercial break.
You could spend days trying to sell privately or selling a flash with We Buy Any Car. Enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com.
I'm a simple man, but now I'm in my 50s, things are getting a little more complicated. Retirement's peeking around the corner, and I wanted to make sure my family would be really looked after if anything happened to me. That's why I decided to learn more about over 50s life insurance from Cover Today.
They're the only over 50s life insurer with no waiting period.
Unlike other insurers who could make you wait up to 2 years, with Cover Today, you're fully covered from day one. And you're covered for the whole of your life.
Plus, unlike other things in life, the price never goes up. Learning more couldn't be simpler. Go online or talk to their friendly UK team in just one phone call.
Cover Today are the only over 50s life insurer with no waiting period and no annoying trips to the doctors either.
Now I'm with Cover Today, I can get on with something much more interesting.
Plus, you get your choice of a £125 gift card. To find out more about Cover Today, call our friendly UK team on 0808 143 4774 or visit covertoday.co.uk.
Sign up and start saving with Quidco today. Get cashback every time you shop on over 5,000 brands. It always pays to Quidco.
Friendly Italian restaurant with outdoor seating nearby and text it to Luca.
Find it real quick, send it to the click. Wow, the place is sick.
Get the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra with Galaxy AI for just $56.99 a month with club card prices. It pays to be connected. Search Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Sitting quietly while your car is made all shiny. Downtime can be just fine too. Ready meal is piping hot. Waterproof on the loo. Just enjoy your back tattoo. Tea break, face break, maybe even watch the ad break. Sometimes it's not time for some tombola, right? It's enjoying lasagna time, chilling with a book time, or time to visit your nan time. Put the phone down.
What are you so happy about?
I've just made a claim. We could be owed thousands.
My claim group?
Yeah, the cars we bought on finance, well, the lenders could have charged hidden commissions. It's dead simple to claim.
Hey, I
had 2 cars before we met.
Go to My Claim Group. You could be owed thousands in hidden commissions from cars you bought on finance since 2007, even if you can't remember the details.
Done.
Simple, eh?
Go to My Claim Group now.
Claims made simple.
Welcome back. You're watching our special edition of the 3 years of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Joining me is Sir Martin Sorrell from London to talk about where do things stand. As things stand right now, sir, we are nowhere closer to this war ending than what we were 3 years back. All one can now hear is a lot of moral outrage by European leaders who've descended in Kiev. But outrage they can all have, but they don't seem to have solutions.
Well, to be fair, the difference is that we now have some form of contact between the US and Russia, which we've not had under the Biden administration. I mean, for good or bad, that's what we have now. And I think communication or some form of communication may not be satisfactory from President Zelensky's point of view or the Ukrainian point of view, or indeed from the European point of view, but at least we have some contact and some involvement from the US and Russia. And I think that is the change that's taken place. Whether this will lead to a settlement, as you're suggesting, is another question, because there are a number of extreme positions on both sides, and it sounds as though the initial positions will make it extremely difficult to get there, whether it's membership of NATO, return of territory that's been taken by the Russians either in 2014 with Crimea or indeed the Donbass. We'll have to see. But I would sort of disagree a little bit with you that at least we have communication. We need that. We've seen that in the case of US and China, that when we have communication, there's more chance of us being together. You referred to the fact that I'm from the advertising industry and communication works. And if you don't have it, it doesn't work.
You think that in hindsight, maybe these communication lines should have been established earlier?
Yes, I definitely do. I draw the parallel with US and China. When we didn't have the communication, it was extremely dangerous. I mean, mistakes can be made on either side, and there can be miscommunication or misunderstandings if there's no communication. So I think it is much better that we have communication. Obviously, President Trump has been very tough on Zelensky and has said some very tough things about him and his position. And we'll have to see how this shakes out. I think on the other side, as a number of people here in the UK, the ex-intelligence community have pointed out, that the Russian economy is not in good shape. The Russians have lost, I've seen estimates, huge estimates. I think you've included those figures in the program. Last week in Miami, I think President Trump suggested that 900,000 Russians and 600,000 Ukrainians had either been killed or injured in the 3-year conflict so far. I don't know whether those numbers are accurate or not, but whatever the number is, it's a
huge toll. It's a huge human toll
on a war. Human toll. And to be fair to President Trump, that is what he is very focused on, or appears to be very focused on in his statements, that he wants to end the conflict because he wants to end the senseless killing and maiming and injuring.
What do you think of his approach? What do you think of his approach where, he's, to a large extent, he's blindsided European leaders? They didn't even know when he picked up the phone and spoke to President Putin on 10th of February. Now they're taking turns to come and meet him. Your Prime Minister is set to be in Washington on Thursday. What do you think about that?
Our Prime Minister is behind the French President and the Polish Prime Minister. They're all lining up to see President Trump in Washington, which I think he is somewhat flattered by, to say the least. No, look, the situation is extremely difficult. It will be extremely difficult to resolve, but at least, I would have to say, under the Biden regime, we had inaction. We had inaction in the Middle East. We had inaction as far as Russia and Ukraine is concerned. And to some extent, we had inaction in relation to the US and China. That's the third theater, if I can put it that way, that we've yet to see what will happen. That's the third big geopolitical issue that we have to deal with. I mean, there are others like North Korea, but those three things, the Middle East, Russia, Ukraine, the US, China, are the big three issues that President Trump, I'm sure, is focused on. But look, I will have to see how it shakes out. At Munich, we had some communication also with Europe. To be fair to President Trump, also, he's made it quite clear in Trump 1.0 as he is in Trump 2.0 that Europe has to fend for itself or fend more for itself than it has done historically. Spending 2 or 3% of GDP on defense is not sufficient. And we can't rely in Europe, as we have done since World War II, on the US for our own defense. We are going to have to devote greater resources to defense, both from a UK point of view and a European point of view. 2 or 3% of GDP may not even be sufficient. We may have to drive it up even further, and we have to look to our own resources in order to deal with the defense issues and the military issues in Europe. So that is a big change. It is now a situation where strong world leaders and nation states negotiate sort of unilaterally rather than multilaterally, and that's something we're going to have to get.
Indeed, Sir Sorrell, thank you so much for speaking to me on NDTV. The fact that those communication lines could have been established earlier is what some of these leaders that you were seeing pictures of should in fact be cognizant of. We come back and talk more on this. Stay with us. We're slipping into a very short break. More on the Russia-Ukraine war and what lies ahead after this break.
From tech titan to global philanthropist, Bill Gates has had a huge impact on the lives of millions across the world. As the co-founder of Microsoft, he's in a sense defined what personal computing has been for all of us. The vision that he had of the personal computer way back in the 70s and its evolution and the transformation of Microsoft has been fundamental in terms of tech, in terms of IT, in terms of the entire sector. And it's time now for Mr. Gates to pen his thoughts down, which is why he's come out with this. This is the first of 3 books. It's called Source Code, My Beginnings, and it's my great privilege to be over here in Palm Springs, in California, to speak about this. Thank you, and I'm delighted to be over here, fly all the way across the world, and I've had a chance to really go through this book. It's very, very interesting.
Thank you.
One of the primary themes which I found throughout the book has to do with your own intensity. The fact that you've always been driven. I mean, we know that is a fact, but we perhaps didn't know about the extent to which you were focused. And you write, for example, and I quote, "Like one of those watertight hatches on a submarine, I could shut out the rest of the world. Driven by the sense of responsibility I felt for Microsoft, I had closed the hatch door and locked the wheel. No girlfriend, no hobbies. My social life centered around Paul, Rick, and the people we worked with. It was the one way I knew to stay ahead." Could you tell us about how your focus ultimately resulted in you being the Bill Gates we know today?
Well, part of my makeup, even from a young age, was that if something was fascinated, I could really dig in on it. So, learning to play cards with my grandmother, having books read to me, reading books, and mathematics early on fascinated me, and so I went into depth. But then I took that to a new level when I started Microsoft, because I knew, there'd be other people trying to do software, and I decided, no, I'm going to make sure we stay ahead. I was always kind of worried somebody else would do well, and so during my 20s, I was really monomaniacal, not only using that ability to focus, but kind of making sure that software was the only thing that I focused on.
Welcome back. You're watching our special broadcast on the third anniversary of what is turning out to be the longest war in Europe since the Second World War. On your screens, viewers, are those live visuals coming in of European leaders who have descended in Kiev to, well, express their moral outrage, because at this stage, that's best what they can do. There are some experts who feel that the communication lines that President Trump has established with President Putin should have been done earlier, if for nothing else, but for the sake of thousands and thousands of people who've lost their lives on both sides, in Ukraine and in Russia. On your screens are some of those live visuals. That is the EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen, who's met Vladimir Zelensky a short while back. Everybody has come to Kiev, but even as questions still remain. United Nations General Assembly is set to vote on 2 competing resolutions, marking 3 years since this what started as a limited military invasion and activity inside Ukraine. The United States is urging member states to support its draft resolution, which calls for a swift end to the war but does not mention Russia's troop withdrawal. Washington is also asking countries to reject a rival resolution that's backed by Ukraine and the European allies, which demands that Russia withdraws and goes outside the Ukraine territory. The vote comes as President Trump pushes to broker peace with Russia, raising concerns in Europe that they are being completely sidelined. This comes even as President Macron, who will be followed by the Polish president and then the UK Prime Minister, to ensure that they have at least a seat on the table to remain relevant. Let's quickly now get in guests joining me for this special discussion to talk more about it. I have with me Miss Victoria, who's joining me on the show. I also have Nicholas Nugent as well as Tatiana, who's joining me to talk more on this. In fact, Tatiana, let me start with you. As things stand right now, the more they change, the more they remain the same. Yes, we are talking about some sort of a peace momentum, that there may be some sort of a momentum towards a possible peace solution, but the fact is there is no peace.
Well, Gaurie, good day to you. But as far as I'm concerned, I think that you're talking about peace. We here in Moscow are talking about a normalization of relationships between Moscow and Washington and a possibility of a negotiation. Not about peace per se, because we've had, if we go as back to 2014, we had an agreement. That's why, I've been sitting here tuned into this broadcast for half an hour, because you connected me a long time ago. For some reason, everybody keeps talking that, well, Russia wants assurances. Of course Russia wants assurances. We had a negotiation that lasted overnight, and every journalist in the world was tuned in for hours and hours. And then the world leaders, Angela Merkel at the time, the greatest by far leader in the past, at least decade that Europe has seen, and everybody was saying, look, we have an agreement, and the Minsk agreements were broken almost the next day by Ukraine. So we had a very nice agreement in place that never stood, because Ukraine said, okay, this is on paper. In reality, we're going to continue killing people in Donbass. And this is, again, something that you and your correspondents, even the correspondent in Moscow, which I'm actually appalled to hear, is kind of omitting from this report altogether.
Tatiana, at least you will not, you will at least appreciate the fact that we are being balanced and representing the two sides. I gave as much time to the correspondent from Moscow.
Oh God, no. I will never agree to that.
Than the one in Ukraine. Anyhow, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question and give you enough time, Tatiana, which is that the crux of the issue comes down to just that. reading of an issue differently by Ukraine and Russia, which is the 2014 agreement that you're referring to. Let me now move ahead and ask about, you're saying that it's about normalization of relationship between US and Russia. Where does then Ukraine and by extension NATO figure in this?
Ukraine doesn't figure anywhere in the US-Russia relations. It doesn't have, a place in this because a bilateral relation is a bilateral by definition. If we're talking about NATO and what President Zelensky said yesterday, that he's ready to give up his presidency, but only if Ukraine is included into NATO, this is, again, a part of his very populistic discourse that he continues in order to, first of all, continue moralizing, his countrymen, which I can do nothing but commend him for. He's been very good on the media front. That's something that we cannot take away from him. But it is talking for the sake of talking. This is pure populism.
Okay. Nicholas, respond to what Tatiana just said, which is that, well, at the end of the day, it's a bilateral relationship between America and Russia, something that whole of Europe is appalled over, something that Ukraine is not being able to digest because, they feel they should have a seat at the high table as well. They don't have one right now. But is this how this entire issue is now going to be dealt with between President Putin and President Trump?
Well, look, let's take a step back. And much though I appreciate the way you're bringing together representatives from different countries, that's full marks to you. We're not doing a negotiation here. And speaking for myself, I can only observe what's going on. I'm not going to find fault. I'm not going to criticize what happened in 2014 or indeed what's going on now. So if I look at what's going on now, I would agree with Tatiana that the positive side is that, and indeed Sir Martin Sorrell moments ago, the positive side is that Russia and America are talking in a way they haven't been talking for quite a long time. And that surely must be a prerequisite for any advance towards peace. Yes, Europe are rather up in arms about that because they've been left out. But we've got time. Things will change. The starting point, as I say, was that Russia or America starts talking to Russia again, which is absolutely crucial. We've got the European leaders in Kiev today. We've got other European leaders visiting Washington this week. So it's quite a critical week as to what goes on. Yes, I sit here in Europe and I have my concerns at the way there seems to be a wedge in NATO, because NATO, which, to be blunt, was born the same year I was. In other words, it's kept the peace in Europe as we see it for all those years. There is an argument that NATO is outdated and we need some new security apparatus for Europe. Perhaps that will emerge from this. But we are in a little bit of a sort of démarche since the Riyadh talks between Russia and America. Europe doesn't quite know where it stands, but we are close to the source of the conflict. We in Europe have the biggest reason for wanting to see peace. And frankly, in my own country, in Britain, we would rather be talking to Russia again. Let me say that to Tatiana. And by the way, may I also add that I've spent quite a lot of time in the Donbass, so I do know the territory we're talking about, which used to be Ukraine-controlled and is now Russian-controlled. So I've got quite strong views on that, but I'm trying to keep my personal opinion out of this.
Okay, so very important takeaways.
What is going on?
Absolutely, very important takeaways here on the show. We earlier had Martin Sorrell also, sitting in London, who said, well, these conversations should have happened earlier. You have Nicholas here, who's also saying, well, UK would prefer to speak to Russia, but of course, right now it's not being able to. And of course, you have these European leaders all taking turns to come and meet President Trump to at least, of course, remain relevant. Victoria, where does that put Ukraine? President Trump is clear there are going to be no American boots on ground. He's also very clear this is pretty much now an equation between Trump and Putin. Where does that leave? Forget Zelensky, Ukraine in this.
That leaves us with a very pro-Russian, as of now at least, pro-Russian position, unfortunately. And excluding the main country that is being invaded is weird, to say the least. I'd say, geopolitically hilarious to a point. Ukraine's main issue with that is that we have no guarantees whatsoever, whether or not it's about the rare materials found in our land, or it is something about the guarantees, the peace talks, the basically anything geopolitically related. Ukraine is out of it. So we are not happy with that. It repeats over and over again, and we know to what result it led previously in 2014, and it's not satisfactory, and we have this war right now because of those talks. We are in danger of repeating that mistake again.
Okay, I'll give a chance to Tatiana to respond. Only one request, let's not make it a slanging match, but Tatiana, I give you the chance to respond to what was just said by Victoria.
Well, I don't see how you would consider what I said a slanging match. Look, Victoria's, again, twisting the reality, unfortunately. Yes, we did see what the 2014 talks resulted in. It resulted in the increase in the anti-terrorist operation, as Kiev called it, which was basically killing Russian-speaking population in the Donbass, which is, again, what led to the Donbass and to other regions. Let us not forget there were 4 regions of Ukraine that demanded or requested to join Russia, which was then why this special military operation started, because these regions joined Russia, they voted, and we are still defending that population that asked to join the country. So let's please keep that in mind, you know, when it comes to your very balanced broadcast.
Okay. You know, Nicholas, then let me ask you this question that, you know, you mentioned about the fact that Europe needs to now, of course, invest more in terms of its security. Even the bare minimum 2% of GDP that NATO has mandated is not being addressed to by several European leaders. In the wake of the fact that America has made it absolutely clear that there will be no boots on ground for America, no guarantees being made, and America will not be funding any security guarantees in Europe, specifically for Ukraine. Are we then looking really at a ceasefire agreement which would just become the permanent solution? Or are we really hopeful of a long-term peace solution here?
Well, to your first question, I would say I simply don't know. To your second question, yes, I hope we're looking at a long-term ceasefire peace. Obviously, that's the prize. That's what everybody wants, an end to this interminable war, 3 years on. But you're trying to get me to predict quite what's going to happen, and I've no idea. We're getting all sorts of suggestions of a peacekeeping force, but where does the peacekeeping force go? Along the front line, the current front line? And if so, who should be making up that peacekeeping force? Should it be from one side or the other, or should it be neutrals? I would be inclined to say it should be made up of people from countries not involved in the conflict. But what do I have to say? I mean, I'm just speculating, or indeed I'm reading the speculation. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen in stages, and we've seen stage 1. As I say, the Americans talking to the Russians is stage 1. Stage 2, you could say, is pressure from the Europeans towards the Americans not to exclude them. But at what point Russia and Ukraine talk to each other, I don't know. Is that going to be within a week or two, or is it going to take rather longer? Because you're not going to begin to solve this conflict until the two participants are talking to each other. It's really a question in my mind as to how we get to that point, who forces people to that point. And that's why I'm being quite positive about the fact that Mr. Putin is talking to Mr. Trump. That seems to be the beginning of
beautiful friendship.
America, let's say America talking to both sides. Yes, it doesn't look like it has a very cozy relationship with Ukraine at the moment, which is disappointing to those of us who are close to the source of the conflict and are very keen to see an end to it.
All right, I have to leave it there. Thank you so much, all three of you, for taking out the time and joining me on this special broadcast. And viewers, if there were any doubts about President Trump's view of the Ukraine war, America's support of Kiev's fight against Russia, he put them at rest last week. He lashed out at President Zelensky, who less than 3 years ago, received a standing ovation in Congress under a different president. And now you have the new president calling him a dictator, accusing him of corruption. A lot has changed, but what all? This report tells you in detail.
Modestly successful comedian. He refuses to have elections, is low in a dictator without elections. He's not going to have a country left. Got to move.
In 2022, when Russia launched its brutal invasion of Ukraine, the world rallied behind Vladimir Zelensky, casting him as a hero. Fast forward to today, the current US President Donald Trump is flipping the script. After US-Russia talks in Saudi Arabia that Ukraine claims were organized behind its back, Trump accused Zelensky of being a dictator without elections, even claiming Ukraine started the war. Trump, through his latest remarks, has painted Zelensky as a con artist who manipulated the United States into pouring billions into a war with no end in sight, while also accusing him of playing Joe Biden like a fiddle.
Modestly successful comedian was playing Joe Biden like a fiddle. He played him like a fiddle. That's an expression we use, yes, sir, to say that he's pretty easy, A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. Got to move fast.
But Zelensky did not start this war. He is the victim of an unprovoked Russian invasion, and the US supported him because his country was under attack, not because of some grand manipulation. So analysts highlight that Trump's rhetoric goes beyond criticism. He's rewriting history, blaming Zelensky, not Putin, for the devastation. And as Trump pushes for a dramatic shift in US foreign policy, Ukraine fears that with these rapid developments, American support could wane.
Президент Трамп з великою повагою до нього відносимося як до лідера народу, який ми дуже поважаємо, американський народ, який нас постійно підтримує. На жаль, живе в цьому дезінформаційному просторі.
Trump's allies, though, are speaking out. Mike Pence, his former vice president, slammed his revisionism, calling it a dangerous distortion of the truth. But on the other hand, Trump's comments are getting praise from Moscow, with Putin's allies applauding him for attacking Ukraine's leader. This marks a major shift. US presidents may not always agree with their allies, but they don't often openly turn on them. Trump's words may not just be an attack on Zelensky, they could be setting the stage for a radical departure from America's current stance, leaving Ukraine vulnerable. Meanwhile, recent polls in Ukraine indicate that Zelensky's approval ratings are around 50%. So what does this mean for the future of US-Ukraine relations? Will this sharp rhetoric signal the beginning of a major geopolitical realignment? Well, only time will tell, but one thing is clear. Trump is rewriting the narrative, and it's one that could have lasting consequences. Parmeshwar Bava for NDTV.
Okay, on your screens, viewers, are those live visuals coming in. As I said, European leaders are in Kiev, and they are showing their solidarity with the Ukraine cause. Some of those leaders are on your screens, and in fact, President Zelensky is now speaking as well. We'll try and cut to that in just a bit. But before that, viewers, it's important to tell you that both Keir Starmer and President Macron have agreed to show united leadership in support of Ukraine when they separately will meet President Trump this week. UK Prime Minister and the French President both spoke on Sunday afternoon to reiterate the importance of Kiev, and they will in fact be putting this up. But the influence of Europe has, of course, dwindled. On your screens are those leaders coming together, but are they relevant is the point. How are they relevant in the entire peace talks? One saw in Riyadh as well, which was essentially about US and Russian delegations thrashing out a potential solution to the war. All right, on that note, we slip into a very short breather. We come back with another big voice on this war after this very short break. Stay with us.
The cost of living crisis is affecting us all, but the impact on Hawela's family is devastating. Hawela has done everything she can for baby Zenadiya, but her community already struggles with poverty. Now they face droughts, food shortages, soaring prices, and it's babies like Zenadiya who suffer the most. She's caught up in a worldwide child hunger crisis that is worsening by the day. This year, over 3 million mothers will lose a child to hunger. Will you help us get urgent food to a baby like Zenadiya? Please support our child hunger crisis appeal by giving £3 a month to Concern Worldwide. Concern supports emergency food programs in 20 countries. But as this crisis deepens, we urgently need to deliver more food supplies. Your £3 a month pays for 120 sachets of nutritious food. They're simple, inexpensive, and save babies' lives month after month. Please think of families like Hawela's. Text HELP NOW to 82727 or call 0800 035 3227. Support our child hunger crisis appeal today. Thank you.
Hi, it's Phoebe from Auto Trader's monthly electric car giveaway, and we're pleased to say that you've won a brand new electric car.
It's a dream, honestly, it really is a dream. Oh my god, me and my boyfriend talk about the Auto Trader competition every single month. I was waiting for the know you ever won.
Now I'm retired, I can spend more time with my grandson. I'm proud of him and want to help any way I can. Which reminds me,
welcome to British Seniors, the UK's #1 rated provider of over 50s life insurance.
Hi, I'd like a quick quote.
No problem. We're proud to offer our seniors lifetime guarantee. With 100% of claims having been paid, we guarantee your premiums will never go up and that you'll speak to one of our specialists in the UK.
Well, that's good to know.
UK residents aged 50 to 80 are guaranteed to be accepted. Depending on your age, your loved ones can get a cash payout up to £10,000.
And that money can help with my funeral costs or even be used as a gift. I'll do it.
Plus, when you sign up, you'll receive a £135 gift card and free 24/7 GP advice and health services.
Thanks, Mum, for everything.
Be proud to protect your loved ones with British Seniors. To get a free quote today, call our UK team on 0800 158 552 or visit britishseniors.co.uk.
Sometimes it's not time for some tombola. It's enjoying lasagna time. Or time to visit your nan time. Put the phone down.
I'll fix him, love. Poor pet. Just shows you never know what's going to happen. Which reminds me, I need to protect the life we've built. That's why I'm looking into Smart Family Life Insurance. Hi, I'd like a quick quote, please.
Okay, you can choose a benefit amount up to £750,000, depending on your age. If you're a UK resident aged 18 to 64, you can apply with just a few health and lifestyle questions. For £250,000 of cover, the price starts at just £14.77 a month.
That's less than I thought. And it could help my husband with the mortgage.
Just like families, not all life insurance is the same. That's why we offer the Smart Family Guarantee.
That's good to know.
You'll also receive a 100% advance in the event of terminal illness and 10% cash back on your first year's premiums. That's the Smart Cashback. Plus, you'll also get your choice of a £125 gift card.
Protect the life you've built the smart way. To get a free quote today, call our specialist UK team on 0800 977 5753 or visit smartinsurance.co.uk.
All right, viewers, we are now joined by Kurt Walkers, a former U.S. envoy to Ukraine under President Trump's earlier administration. He joins me live from Kiev. Mr. Walkers, good to have you back on the show. We spoke last time. You were at the Munich Security Conference. How do you see things as they stand right now? Well, there is still an elusive peace accord.
Well, thank you very much. I'm speaking with you here from Kyiv, Ukraine. I'd say the mood here is a combination of hope and dread. There is hope that 2025 may in fact bring an end to this war, or at least some kind of peace. But there's also dread that Ukraine may end up being forced to pay a very high price for a temporary and unjust peace. And so there is concern about that. The new things are that Putin is in his weakest position that he has been since this war began. Ukraine has gradually rebuilt some strength, I would say, including in its own homegrown defense industry, but it faces difficulties with manpower and the population is very tired. And then you have US President Donald Trump, who is determined to push for an end to the fighting this year, but the details of where that really goes beyond an end to the fighting are still not very clear. And this is going to result in some kind of negotiation. And of course, Putin is insistent on demanding Ukraine's full surrender.
Okay, so you are in Ukraine. Tell us, how are Ukrainians really feeling right now, considering that they've pretty much been left out of this entire peace talk so far?
Well, there are a lot of consultations between the US and Ukraine, also between the US and European allies. So it's not as if no one knows what the other's positions are and what they're thinking. And this is a bilateral channel for US and Russia to talk. The issue is not so much the fact that Ukraine is not physically at that table. It is that they don't actually trust or know what Donald Trump is going to do. And so they're concerned, as you say, that things might be discussed or agreed there that they would not be able to agree to. And then it would look as though they are the ones opposing a settlement rather than it being Russia that has unreasonable demands, which is actually the case.
Okay. There seems to be some sort of a momentum in terms of the peace process. Do you share that optimism that there is a momentum now?
Yes, I do. I think that's right. I think that President Trump has created that momentum. He's pushed for negotiations. He's engaged with Putin directly. He has made it clear that it is a top priority of his. And where I think this is likely to go is that there will be a ceasefire in 2025. There will not be a proper agreement with Russia because Russia will have unreasonable demands. And there will be an effort by Europe to help Ukraine deter Russia violating that ceasefire and launching new attacks, that there would be some kind of deterrent force, some kind of security assurances, and ideally some kind of U.S. backup to that deterrence force, because Russia is not willing to make reasonable arrangements. That is what I think is likely to happen. And then we'll enter a period of time where we have a dispute, but perhaps one that is not being dealt with by military offensives.
Okay. So then what really happens? Because, you know, US is very clear that they are not going to get, they're not going to give any of these security guarantees to Ukraine.
Yeah, I think what is possible is you would have European NATO members having boots on the ground, so to speak, in Ukraine. They would be there in a training and equipping mission and assisting Ukrainians, especially with air defense. NATO countries, Poland and Romania, could potentially extend some air defense coverage over Western Ukraine from their own territory. You could have some NATO units in Ukraine that have air defense capability. And then the US would provide enablers, intelligence, reconnaissance. It would be able to provide air power in extremis, so that if there were a need, the US could be considered an over-the-horizon presence. I think those things are possible, but they are not yet quite on the table. And I think that this is what Macron and Starmer actually want to talk with President Trump about.
All right, Mr. Walkers, we leave it there. Thanks much for speaking to me. And as we wrap this special show, on your screens, viewers, are some of those discussions that you see where European leaders are trying to have some sort of a solution, hopefully. And on the other side of the screen are those remnants of how war has ravaged Ukraine and Russia in the last 3 years. Hopefully, these leaders will find a solution to end the misery.
Ladies and gentlemen,
we found the reason why Britain hasn't been so great of late.
it's because the country hasn't been eating enough Weetabix. It makes sense. I've been eating
croissants.
We should deliver Weetabix to where it's needed most, to whoever's in charge of fixing potholes. VAR.
Yes.
And drivers who park like this.
Yeah.
To Britain, we must say, have you had your Weetabix?
What are you so happy about?
I've just made a claim. We could be owed thousands.
My claim group.
Yeah, the cars we bought on finance, well, the lenders could have charged hidden commissions. It's dead simple to claim.
Hey, I had 2 cars before we met.
Go to My Claim Group. You could be owed thousands in hidden commissions from cars you bought on finance since 2007, even if you can't remember the details.
Done.
Simple, eh?
Go to My Claim Group now.
Claims made simple.
I urgently need to ask for your help on behalf of animals at risk right now. With the pandemic came a surge in pet ownership. And sadly, we're now seeing a serious rise in neglect, cruelty, and abuse. Our services are being stretched to the limit. To make matters worse, our costs are soaring too. But we refuse to let animals suffer. So please, act now to help rescue the growing number of animals who've never needed us more. Please call or text the number on screen now to give £2 a month to the RSPCA. In one of the toughest times we have ever experienced, your gift will make all the difference to animals. You could help provide more life-saving treatment, food, shelter, and the loving care that many have never known. We know there are millions of you who, like us, care deeply and won't stand by while animals are suffering. We have to reach those trapped in a life of abuse and neglect before it's too late. Because for many, the RSPCA is their only hope. But we can only come to the rescue with the support of people like you. So please, will you help us be there no matter what? Call 0800 313 4392 or text RSPCA to 78866 to start your monthly gift today. Thank you.
I like to think ahead. Make sure I've got all the right tools for the job. And now that I've turned 50, it means looking after what I've built. I'll be retiring down the line, and with the mortgage nearly done, I want to make sure that my lot will be protected if anything happened to me. That's why I decided to learn more about over 50s life insurance from Cover Today. They're the only over 50s life insurer with no waiting period. Unlike other insurers who could make you wait up to 2 years for full cover, with Cover Today, you're fully covered from day one. And you're covered for the whole of your life. Plus, unlike other things in life, the price never goes up. Learning more couldn't be simpler and can be done in just a few minutes. Go online or talk to one of their friendly UK team who will chat you through your options in just one phone call. And their claims process is really straightforward, so your loved ones will be looked after.
Cover Today are the only over 50s life insurer with no waiting period. Get covered in minutes with no annoying trips to the doctor. With fixed monthly payments, prices start at just £4.42 a month. Plus, you get your choice of a £125 gift card.
Cover Today has given me genuine peace of mind. And now that's done, I can get on with something much more interesting.
To find out more about Cover Today, call our friendly UK team on 0800 470 4322 or visit covertoday.co.uk.
The race to rescue 8 workers trapped in the Telangana tunnel for a third day takes a dramatic turn as water and sludge levels rise. The rescue ops slow down. Teams are on standby. India and UK resumed trade talks after an over a year pause. Union Minister Piyush Goyal says the free trade agreement is a win-win for both countries, while the UK Trade Minister says looking for strong trade partnership with India. India stock markets plunged over 1% in trade today. Tariff uncertainties as well as the US economic slowdown are driving down the markets. And there was glamour at the Mahakumbh today as both stars Akshay Kumar and Katrina Kaif visited Prayagraj and took a dip at the Sangam. All right, so let's get started. And as we said, it was quite a whirlwind of a day for the Prime Minister. He was first in Madhya Pradesh and then in Bihar, where he sounded the poll bugle. And now he is in Assam, where also his focus is on the election, the states due for elections of Assam and Bengal. So it's the Prime Minister's first visit, in fact, to Assam after taking charge for a third time, and there was a massive performance, as you can see there, a huge dance performance for the Prime Minister for the tea and celebration of the tea estates there and the tea industry in Assam. There you can see those visuals coming in. Well, let's go across to Ratnadeep now for more. And Ratnadeep, it's quite the performance there, the Jumoir Assam tea tribe's tradition, this traditional dance. But yes, tell us more about what the Prime Minister said in his address.
That's right, it's a stellar performance by those over 8,000